We start by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thanking Him for allowing us to be here, gathered here today. I know it was notice, but alhamdulillah, had the opportunity to be here, coming from Mississauga on Friday. And I know, subhanAllah, for everybody here to sacrifice your time on a Friday night when you can be at home doing anything else. But I think the topic is important because a lot of the times this is a very neglected area. And I travel, like the brother was saying, across Canada and the US, talking to Muslim parents and families and teenagers. And we find that the problems in the community are getting more and more complex. 5 to 10 years ago, the problems that we faced as the community were different. And I know this because back in 2002, 2003, I found an organization called Nasiha, Muslim Youth Advice Network. And in that organization, Muslim youth across Canada and the US could pick up a phone and call and speak to a counselor and discuss their problems. And a lot of the issues that we got back then were more of drinking, some parental abuse, physical abuse, boyfriend, girlfriend. And the issues that we're facing now as an ummah, as a community, at a global level, not just local, are far more complex. And I'll give some examples of that in my talk, inshallah. I'll try to keep it short, but inshallah. Before I start, I want to tell you that in my talk, I may offend some of you. And I want to make that clear. Because when it comes to parenting, if you think about it, if you're walking in the mall or you're in the masjid, and someone comes to you and tells you, hey, I think your child should behave like this, your child is acting like this, a lot of the times that's a very personal thing. And interestingly enough, if you look in the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when He mentions the trials and the tests that we have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions wealth and children. And one of my teachers used to say that because these are two very personal things. It's very difficult to give your wealth, right? It's very easy to give your time, but when it comes to giving our wealth, it's something we're very personally attached to. And when it comes to our children, it's the same thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, verily your children and your wealth are a test for you. So we take this very personally. So when I talk about our children, when I talk about the families, the ummah and the teenagers, please just remember and be cognizant of the fact that a lot of this is my personal opinion and my personal study. And I talk about the family system and how the problems and the root causes of the problems, inshallah. So just as an introduction for myself, I have a background in social work. I've worked in many different disciples of social work, from teenagers, geriatrics. I've worked in addictions. And from just the range of children on the spectrum that I've worked with, I've worked from families where, very low income areas, marginalized families. I've worked to very wealthy families who are dealing with different issues, domestic violence, emotional abuse, addictions. And I found that the problems, regardless of which area we're looking at in terms of finances and income or communities, structures, where they are, whether here, whether in Calgary, Alberta, Edmonton, no matter where we go, we find the similar problems. Actually, it's not just across Canada, it's across the globe. With the information of technology and the spread of technology, the problems are spreading. And we as a community, we need to mobilize ourselves, we need to educate ourselves, and we need to prepare ourselves on how to deal with these problems. And especially as parents, as community leaders, as elders, grandparents, uncles, aunts, mothers, we need to make sure we're aware of what's going on. And we're aware of strategies, because I believe in teaching strategies that actually work, that we can implement, inshallah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make sure through those strategies we can guide our children back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The communities that we go to and we talk to them, I get the same thing. Every masjid says, what is the problem with the Muslim youth? How come Muslim youth don't come to the masjid? What are the issues? To address this, first and foremost, we need to stop looking at what's going on with the Muslim youth, and we need to look at ourselves. So when I talk about everything that I'm talking about throughout my talk, I'm talking to myself and you and I, and then through that, we will talk about the Muslim youth. So just be cognizant of that. Keep that in mind. we talk about the Muslim youth and the problems in our ummahs. And we look at, why kids are not coming to the masjid. Why Muslim youth are not coming to the masjid. And through this course, through this short workshop that I have, I will give you strategies that you can get your children to come to the masjid and get your families come to the masjid and actually enjoy the process. So, the first thing we have to do is we have to renew our intentions. Why are we here? The main thing is if our hearts are pure and we're doing it for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make our strategies more effective. That's something we need to really, really realize. With anything, with any da'wah that you do, if your heart is pure and you're doing it only for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make our strategies, our effectiveness better, inshaAllah. Now, when it comes to parenting, right, everybody thinks they know how to parent. Everyone thinks, I know how to parent, I know how to raise my children, I don't need your advice. And sometimes when I go to locations and do these workshops, a lot of children say, I want my parents to come to these workshops, but unfortunately my parents, they think they know everything about parenting. My father thinks he knows how to be a parent, or my mother thinks they know how to be a parent. And they feel like they're dishonored if they have to learn from somebody else. But that's something we need to take away as communities. We have to break those cultural boundaries and understand that we are all in this together and there are better ways and we have to learn them and we have to apply them, inshallah. So when it comes to parenting, there are two extremes of parenting. And I'll run you through each strategy and you'll kind of see where you fall in. So the children come home from school. Around 3:30, they come home, they put their bags on the floor, they put their shoes on the floor, they go upstairs, they change into their home clothes, they come downstairs, they grab lunch or they grab dinner, and mom says, what do you want for dinner? The kids say, oh, we want pizza for dinner. Mom says, okay, I'm going to prepare the pizza. Mom goes and starts preparing the pizza. The kids go, they turn on the TV, they start watching TV. Then after that, the kids are watching Netflix, the kids are watching whatever's online, the parents are not aware of what they're watching, the parents don't care. After that, the parents tell the kids, okay, we're going to go to Quran class, they jump in the car, they go to Quran class, the parents drop them off from the door, and they leave. They pick up the kids on the way home, the radio's on, and they're talking about songs that they've listened to at school. They come home, parents are on their phone, kids are on their phone. And these parents, when you talk to them, and ask them, how's your relationship with your kid? They say something very interesting. They say, my child is my best friend. I have an amazing relationship with my child, and my son or my daughter is my best friend. Now, there's another extreme of parenting, and this form of parenting is very poisonous. Okay? Thinking that your child is your best friend, because we assume that, okay, in this country, we have to be best friends with our children. Because that's the only way that we're going to have a communication with them. That's the only way we're going to know what they're going through, what problems they're having in their lives. And then I ask those parents, I say, do your kids actually talk to you about their problems? And they say no. And they have difficulty trying to get their children to understand rules and regulations, how to apply rules and regulations. And they tell me, why are my children always watching TV? Then we have another extreme of parenting, and that extreme of parenting is like the regiment lifestyle where you're constantly breathing down your children's throats. You're telling them, wake up in the morning at 6 a.m. for Fajr. You're making them pray Fajr. After that, you're taking them to school. Once they come home from school, no TV, no extra time. You give them the food they need. You take them to Quran class. You bring them home. They go to sleep at 9 o'clock. They know they can't talk on the phone. They can't go on the internet. They can't have friends. The kids have no social life. And this is the one extreme of parenting. So what we need to find is the middle path. This form of parenting is just as poisonous as this form of parenting. And I'll explain that in a minute. Some people say, well, what's wrong with this form of parenting? We're telling the children to pray. We're telling the children to take Quran classes. We're telling the children to do this. We're making sure they stay away from haram. The truth of the matter is, in the society that we live in, both of these ways of parenting are poisonous. And before you jump to conclusions and say, brother, you're saying that making your kids read Quran and this is poisonous, I'll explain that, inshallah, when I get there. So, both forms of parenting are poisonous, and I'll tell you why. Your child does not want you to be their best friend. If you look at who your best friend is somebody within your age group, maybe 3-4 years older than you, 3-4 years younger than you. You don't say my father or my mother is my best friend. Right? Generally you say that. And honest truth is the kids don't want you to be their best friend because they have their best friend. And when you say, oh, my best friend, they're not going to talk to you the same way they talk to their friends. And this form of parenting, the children say, we have no connection with our parents. Our parents are very strict. We have no relationship with them. We can't connect to them. We can't relate to them. They have a cultural mindset, and there's no relationship between us. So the middle path is what we have to build. And if you look at the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabas and the scholars, they tell us that this middle path is the path of success when it comes to anything in your life. When it comes to anything in your life, especially when it comes to your iman, the middle path is the most successful path. And the Prophet ﷺ forbade us from all forms of extremism, not just in worship, right? In all paths of life. And we know the Prophet ﷺ continuously reminded us to be lenient. So how do we be lenient while safeguarding our children? And that is something we'll talk about, inshaAllah. So we know that our children are a test. We know we have to be lenient. How do we achieve that leniency in parenting? You know, parenting honestly requires mother and father. And a lot of communities that I go to, we have single mothers. Okay, a lot of communities we have single mothers. But most of our families are run by single mothers. What does that mean? The husbands are there, but they're just physically present. Most of our husbands are not there at all. And I'm going to talk about this, and when I talk about husbands, I offend people, but I tell them the truth like it is. Husbands feel like they don't have to be a part of the equation. A husband says, hey, I worked 8 hours, I worked 10 hours. That's parenting. This is not parenting. And we'll talk about that, inshallah. So, husband and wife are both required to be active in the process. Now, if it is just a mother and it is just a father, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I tell single mothers, because mostly we have communities with single mothers, and the way the divorce rate right now is, and the amount of neglect from the husbands towards the mothers, we have to tell our mothers that you have to accept and embrace this test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You have to play both roles. And if you're a single father, you have to play both roles. And you have to accept this test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be difficult, but the rewards are also greater from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So if you're a single mother, you're a single father, whenever I talk about husband and wife, you have to play both roles. So embrace that test and be strong. It's not an easy position to be in. Now the divorce rate in the Muslims communities of young Muslims that are getting married is almost 50 to 65%. This is the young Muslim that are getting married in Canada and the US statistics. They vary in some parts, but generally, 5 out of 10 marriages are ending in divorce. They're ending in divorce. And before we used to see just youngsters were getting divorced. Now the trend is spreading at a global level. Elders are getting divorced. We're finding people that have been married for 20, 30 years are coming to divorce. And it's very common. Everybody generally knows somebody that's divorced, or they know a young couple that got married, and then after 6-7 months you get the news that unfortunately, they had some issues and they got divorced. It's very common. And I know if I asked everybody would generally put their hand up. I know a good brother, I know a good sister that they got married, and unfortunately they got divorced. They were practicing of Islam, but they got divorced. Now, divorce is something that's become a norm in our society. So it's something that we need to deal with and we need to work around, unfortunately. And this is not a marital counseling session, but it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us permissible for us, but it's something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not like. And for me personally, I believe a lot of divorce cases happen because the family structure is broken. There's distance from Islam, and this is one of the main root causes. Now, That happens because of a couple of reasons. Most Muslim families, we have a major problem, and it's abuse. And I'm not talking about physical abuse, domestic abuse, because this is rampant in the Muslim community, of course. But it's not as big as the other kind of abuse. The other kind of abuse, I personally think 80% of the Muslim families have this. This is emotional abuse. This is neglect. This is a major, major problem in our communities. Emotional abuse and neglect. This is happening because husbands feel like at least I'm not physically abusing my wife or my children, but they're not aware sometimes that they're emotionally abusing their wives and their children. This is something very, very rampant and leading to divorce, addictions, leading to cheating, leading to cutting amongst the children, or they cut themselves, leading to teenage pregnancies, leading towards divorce, leading towards addictions, mental health, stress, anxiety, depression. These are all coming from the fallout of the Muslim family. That's something we need to understand. And I'll give you this example. I work with a lot of Muslim youth who are addicted to drugs, pornography, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever it may be. Even now, whatever drugs you find out there or addictions, I ask them, what is the root cause of why you ended up joining a gang? Why did you end up in an addiction process? What happened? And the one thing that they'll tell me is I came from a religious practicing family. Alhamdulillah, my father, he was practicing, hardworking. My mother, she was aware, always telling us to read Quran and stuff like that. And we went to Quran classes. But in my house, there was no love. My mother and father were always arguing. There was never domestic violence, but I found like my father didn't care. All he ever did was work. He'd come home. Mom was just telling us, read this, read that, and she didn't have control over us. And I ended up not feeling love in the house. And as a community, unfortunately, Muslims, we don't like talking about love. And it's really sad. We don't have this concept of telling our sons, our daughters, I love you. And it may seem strange to a lot of us because back home we don't do that. We don't tell our children, I love you, or sometimes we don't tell our parents, I love you. Pakistan, some Middle Eastern countries, it's a concept that's very foreign. And some of us, we don't tell our wives and our husbands that I love you. And unfortunately, we have to understand that this is not the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Also, over here on the minbar, when we talk about rules and regulations, when we talk about Islam, it's constantly this negative aspect that we bring to Islam. Halal, haram, fiqh, aqidah, tafsir. We're talking about things that are not relevant to our children. And when we're talking about when something is wrong, we tell them all the fiqh about why it's haram. And the truth of the matter is, that's not the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you read the Quran and you read the hadith, the Prophet ﷺ talked about love. He talked about mercy. In the Quran, there's more love, mercy, forgiveness than there is punishment. So when we change the da'wah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're pushing our youth away from Islam. We have this, people say, Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. Go out there and see the amount of Muslim youth that are leaving Islam. Atheism. It's very high numbers. It's not a small number. And it's not coming because they have issues with understanding the concept of the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the concept of God. It's what's happening in the households. Their image of Islam is what you are as a father, what you are as a mother. That is their da'wah. You are their understanding of Islam. And that's a responsibility that me and you have to accept whether we like it or not. Islam that they learn will be from us. Not the responsibility of the imam, but your responsibility. And so, this neglect and abuse is pushing children away from Islam. When they don't find love at home, they go to gangs, they go to addictions, they watch pornography. It's not because, the industry in the world is filled with a lot of this type of stuff and they see all these things. That is true. That's one major reason, but because they don't find love at home. You know, Muslim teenage pregnancies is a very real thing. There's cases of MSAs contacting imams and saying, you know, the MSA, the sister was a part of the MSA, very active in the university MSA, even in the high school MSA, she's wearing a hijab, and now she's pregnant with one of the other brothers in the MSA. This is not a complex issue anymore. This is a normal issue. The amount of Muslim sisters that are getting abortions, it's very normal. The amount of Muslim youth who are involved in LGBTQ, it's very normal now. There's a brother on one of the masjids, his daughter, 17, 18 years old, he contacted me, he said, my daughter, she wears a hijab, her best friend is Pakistani Muslim, she's asking if he can come sleep over and if she has to wear hijab in front of him. He's gay. These are the complexities of the issues that we're facing as a community. I was giving a parenting workshop and the father came to me and said, I have to talk to you about something. I said, okay. He said, I have a 2-year-old daughter, 2 years old, and she goes to daycare. And in the daycare, there's other children who are eating whatever, you know, types of foods, halal, haram, they don't know. And the daughter, she cries. So he asked me, is it okay if my daughter eats some of the things? If it's haram, you know, she's only 2 years old. And I thought to myself, who knew that a 2-year-old would be tested in her iman and her fiqh when we came to this country? Who knew that? Imagine me and you, what we're going through. The identity crisis that me and you have as Muslims. Wallahi, think about that for a second. How many of us can go to our bosses and say, you know, I have to take a leave for prayer? We say, oh, we're going on lunch. Right? A lot of us are embarrassed, or we're not sure how to be proud of our identity. Or we're not sure of our identity is. We don't believe in, you know, talking to non-Muslim women when it comes to the masjid. We're very cognizant of that. But when it comes to going to the bank, we're very open with talking with the bank teller. So we all have this kind of double standard that we're living with. And that's the part that we're fighting, this identity crisis of how do we be Canadian American and how do we be Muslim? Now teenagers or youth from a very young age, they're fighting a much greater battle because they don't understand even any identity. They don't have an established identity. They have to figure out, what does it mean to be Muslim? You already know what it means to be Muslim. They have to figure that out. What does it mean to go through the changes that they're going through? There's body changes, there's cognitive changes that's going on, there's psychological changes. Then they have to deal with their parents. Parents don't understand them. Then they have to deal with their friends at school. There's another peer pressure there. Then they have to deal with their online world, because this is another world that we and you don't have. So they're in a serious identity crisis. And we have to stop putting our children down and stop blaming the problems of the community. The masjids are not full because the youth are misguided. The masjids are not full because me and you have failed at our job. The masjids are not full because me and you have made the masjids these negative places. So that's something our da'wah needs to change. We need to change first and foremost before we invite our children to Islam. We need to change and think about the changes that we need internally. So this abuse is happening at very high levels. Husbands think their roles are just working. You know how the number of Muslim sisters that talk about abuse towards their husbands, it's very high. It's very high. You know, my husband, he comes home, he doesn't do anything. He just comes home, he puts his shoes on the floor, he doesn't even help with cleaning, cooking. He eats, leaves the table with the food on the table, and goes upstairs and goes to sleep. Turns on the news, watches news. Reads his Quran book. That's it. Zero contributions to the household. And then when you ask the husband, oh, you know, I was working all day, 8 hours I worked, I came home. And he's the first one to tell the kids, go and read, turn off the TV. He's the first one to tell the kids, let's go to Quran class. Put the phone away. Why are you always on the phone? And then he's on his phone, WhatsApp, talking back home to Pakistan 24/7. Watching Geo News. Is this da'wah? You want to guide your children, or the example? I asked some fathers. The fathers say, my children don't like going to Quran class. I say, when's the last time you took your child to Quran class, you sat in the Quran class, and you read next to your child? You're not an example. All the kids think is, my parents just want me to go to Quran class. You never picked up the Quran in front of your children. Or you never said, son, you know what, sit down. Today, let's read the seerah tafsir together. I want to show you this beautiful story of the story of Yusuf alayhi salam. 10, 15 minutes, let's read it together. Never happened. Also, as fathers, as husbands, we expect our wives to be slaves. Cleaning. They have to cook, they have to clean. You can't pick up your plate and take it over there. You can't wash the clothes sometimes. I'm not saying bring flowers home and chocolates and say I love you, because we already know this is not going to happen, because we have our cultural barriers when it comes to these things. Although the Prophet ﷺ did these things, surprise to everybody here, the Prophet ﷺ said I love you to his wives. I know maybe it's haram for some of us in our cultures, but the Prophet ﷺ did these romantic things. Maybe for you, you feel like, oh, I can't do that. Okay, show it in a different way. Clean up after yourself. When you go to a restaurant, you do it. When you're at work, you do it. But how come when you come home, that double standard? And guess what? The Prophet ﷺ did that. The Prophet ﷺ helped with cutting the vegetables. The Prophet ﷺ helped with cleaning. The Prophet ﷺ helped with these things. Why for you? What did you do? You worked 8 hours? Imagine now being the Prophet ﷺ, managing the entire ummah, the economics of the ummah. The people were coming with problems. The masjid, mobilizing the Muslim army, making sure the welfare system is okay. Not after 8, 10 hours you come home and rest. Prophet ﷺ, people are coming to the house of the Prophet ﷺ asking questions. While doing all that, being a statesman, being a politician, being a military man, being a family man, he's still washing clothes, doing dishes. So don't tell me I don't have time. Right? SubhanAllah, you have to realize this is what leads to breaking the Muslim household. When you stop taking the roles that you're supposed to do, that Prophet ﷺ made for you. You know, we have this misconception. This is, oh, a man, he should just work and provide. Where in the Sunnah is this? Where in the Sunnah does it say a man's only job is to work and bring the check home? And other than that, no contributions. Not in Islam, not in my religion. Find me one hadith where it says that. It doesn't exist. You won't find this perception. You won't find this perception of slavery. Your wife is your maid, your wife is your slave. Your wife is a slave to your mother. It's not in Islam. It's not in Islam, certainly not. So we've made these things, the way we talk to our wives. Why did you make this? How is this? What's wrong with this? The Prophet ﷺ said, if the salt is less, don't say nothing. Forget if the salt is less, we make demands. Make this today. I don't like this, don't make this. Where in the Sunnah is this? SubhanAllah, we need to understand something. The society that we're living in, the culture we're living in, it's more Islamic than the cultures and Muslim that we have back home. Because now, at least the women, they have some rights. If something happens, you can call the police. Back home, this doesn't exist. You can hit her. There's no rights. Over here, at least something happens, at least she has that right. But you know what? We've instilled fear in our women that they're like a slave. And that's why there's so much emotional abuse in the Muslim community that, you know, maybe you don't know about it. It's happening in your house. With children, with wives, they come to the imams. Or even sometimes they can't even approach the imams. They have nobody to talk to. And it's very, very common. So as men, we need to change. We need to realize, yes, the Prophet ﷺ, you know, one sheikh, he said, it's good, you know, you come to the masjid. It's good you pray in the masjid 5 times a day and you read Quran and all these things. But remember, anybody can be Muslim in the masjid. This is not something special. If you think you come to the masjid and pray 5 times a day and fast in Ramadan and give zakah and made hajj, remember one thing, there's nothing special about you. Remember this. This is the most basic thing required of you in your faith. Your character is what differentiates you. Prophet ﷺ said, I came to perfect character. These are the things you have to do. You have to pray Fajr. You can't think I'm special because I pray Fajr. No, you're supposed to do that. You can't think I'm special because I give zakat. You can't say I'm special because I have a beard. This is something you're supposed to do. It doesn't bring you to elevate you in any way. Yes, it elevates you that now you're a Muslim, because to be a Muslim, you have to pray 5 times a day. You have to give zakat. You have to make hajj. This doesn't elevate you in the eyes of Allah beyond the fact that you're Muslim. You're elevated through the way you are, whether you practice the sunnah, not just by the way you dress. It's by the way your akhlaq, your mannerisms. Don't be, and one shaykh he said this, don't be Abu Bakr in the masjid and Abu Jahl at home. This is very common in our community. We come to the masjid, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. How are you? How's everything? Alhamdulillah, everything is good. Jazakallah khair. When you come home, where's the roti? Where's this? Where's that? You throw your clothes on the floor. You never come to the masjid, you put your shoes on the rack in the masjid. And if somebody puts their shoes on the floor in the masjid, then you make it an issue. What's wrong with the ummah? Look, what's wrong with them? But when you go home, you throw your shoes on the floor. We're living in a hypocritical lifestyle that's very dangerous. Because Islam is not made for the masjid. Islam is not made for your friends. Islam is more so important when you're with your family. More so important when you're outside with non-Muslims. More so important when you're alone. This is when Islam matters. So, we need to stop being abusive verbally and neglect. You know, when we talk about neglect, there's so many types of neglect our community has. So many types of neglect. And I'll be open with you. One of the forms of neglect that we have that we don't understand how much damage it causes is our responsibilities as husbands. Not financially. When your wife tells you the garage door is broken, please fix it. Right? Everyone has that one thing in their house that their wife reminds them about. Fix this, do that. Because she can't do it, she's depending on you. But you say, oh, don't worry, inshallah, next week I'll do it. And you put it off. For you, it's just something to fix. For her, she's feeling neglected. This is wrong. You can't mistreat your wife's needs just to justify your laziness. It's not from the sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ took care of the affairs at his house and the affairs outside his house. You don't, not pay the bills and say, oh, don't worry, I'll do it later. This is neglect. This is considered neglect in the society that we live in. So we can't do these things and expect our wives to be happy with us. Expect our children to respect us. These are very, very scary times that we live in. And if we are not prepared, don't have the strategies in place, we will lose our children. And consistently, we lose our children. Go to CAS, Children's Aid Society. Ask them how many Muslim children they have listed. Hundreds. Hundreds of Muslim children listed. Why? Because we have failed our responsibility as fathers, as husbands. So, these are the realities that we are facing when it comes to as a community. Now, the one thing is that how do we get our children to have a relationship with us? If we're already been neglectful of that relationship, how do we get our children to have a relationship with us? And why do we need a relationship with our children? A relationship with your children is very, very important. And I'll tell you why. Because if your children cannot talk to you, right? And I'm not saying from a best friend's perspective, but I'm saying if your children cannot talk to you about the problems that they're going through, how do you expect them, right? How do you expect them to have a relationship with you? How many of us, men, women, mothers, have a relationship with our children? When we talk about relationship, I'm not saying, when I ask you, do you spend time with your son or your daughter? Don't tell me, yes, I do. What do you do? Oh, I take them to the masjid. Oh, I take them to, people's houses for dinner. This is a very common thing I hear. I spend a lot of time with my children, but they still don't respect me. They still don't listen to me. What time do you spend with them? Oh, we take them on family trips. We take them to restaurants. We take them as a family here. We take them as a family there. They still don't listen. They still don't respect us. I say, look, this is the reason why. I'll tell you this. I asked this father. He said, my daughter, she has a boyfriend. She won't leave her boyfriend. He's not Muslim. Da, 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 da. He's telling me everything. I asked him this. I said, brother, can I ask you a question? He said, yes. I said, what's your daughter's favorite color? And he looked at me, what do you mean, what's my daughter's favorite color? I said, what's your daughter's favorite color? He said, I don't know my daughter's favorite color. He said, why is that important? He said, what's your daughter's favorite dessert? He said, I don't know. I said, what's your daughter's favorite clothing brand? He said, I don't know. I said, you don't even know your own daughter. How do you expect her to have a relationship with you? I ask fathers this question. What's your son's favorite sport? I don't know. What does your son like watching on TV? I don't know. He's always watching TV. I don't know what he watches. Maybe basketball or something. Ask, what does your son enjoy eating? I don't know. What are his hobbies? I don't know. What do you know about your children? Nothing. What do your children? And I asked the children, what do you know about your father? He works. He's an engineer. Okay. When he was growing up, what was his hobbies? I don't know. All they know is my dad, he prays, reads Quran, that's it. My mom, she cooks, she cleans, that's it. They know nothing about you and you know nothing about them. You have no relationship. Every father and every mother should have a time, once a week, a father and a daughter should go out to ice cream shop or a cafe and not talk about Islam. Half an hour, no discussion about Islam. Talk about everything else. Talk about school, talk about work, talk about their goals, what do they like doing. Don't even bring up Islam, half an hour. Get to know them. You want to know why? Because you don't ever walk up to anybody and say, do you know anything about Islam at work? You start getting to know them before you give them da'wah. You can't expect your children, you don't want to know why when your children see you, they say, oh, my parents say this haram, this haram, this haram, this haram. They don't know anything about you. Tell them, you know, hey, I grew up in this part of Pakistan, and when I was growing up, these are the challenges I faced. Tell me, what are the challenges you face? When's the last time you told your children, maybe, you know, when I was your age, I didn't pray that much. I used to play and this and that. I used to be involved with this sports and stuff like that. Get to know them. Get to know them. And you will be surprised at how intelligent they are. You will be surprised at how much they have to offer and how many ideas and how much they want to be like you. But if you don't know them, how can you tell them about Allah? How can you invite them to Islam when they don't know you? That's why, let me tell you something. If you don't take your daughter outside for ice cream and this and that, someone else is going to take her for ice cream. And if you don't take your son out to the movies and play basketball with him once in a while and get to know his sport, he's going to go find it with the homeboys or the gang outside locally. And go in the prison system today. See how many Muslim boys and girls are there. Tons. There's more people having halaqas in the masjids, in the jails on Fridays than they are in the masjids, youth. You'll find more Muslim youth gathering for Jummah in the jails that you'll find in the schools and in the masjids. What happens if you don't have love at home, they'll find love somewhere else. The same thing with us. If you're not happy with your wife because you haven't put in the effort, then you're going to look elsewhere. You're going to see, oh, your eyes are going to wander. If the wives are not finding love at home and they're not emotionally taken care of, they'll find someone else to talk to. They'll vent to their friends. This is neglect. This is something we need to change as a community because, wallahi, these are the reasons that lead to divorce, addictions, abuse. These things are real. Wallahi, they're real. You can't avoid it. You brought your children to this country. Stop running from the responsibility of raising them. Stop running from the responsibility of spending time with them. Get to know them, and wallahi, you'll be surprised at how much they have to offer. You know, parents tell me all the time, I want my child to learn Islam, and they don't like coming to the masjid. So how can I get my child to come to the masjid and love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? This is a huge problem in our ummah. I'm going to tell you very simply. Very simply. You want your children to be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Two things. Be like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam yourself. Also, how? Look, If there's one miracle of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabas, one miracle, the most important miracle was the Prophet ﷺ did one thing. He was able to take average men, even below average men. Umar radiallahu anh came to kill the Prophet ﷺ. He's buried next to him. Abu Dhar radiallahu anh was from a gang that used to rob caravans. These are normal men. Bilal radiallahu anh was a slave. The Prophet ﷺ took average Joes, as we say, average people, worse than average people, and made them into greats. How? Through his actions, his character. I had some parents tell me, you know, my children don't like being like the Prophet ﷺ. They don't want to learn about the Prophet ﷺ's life. I said, I understand why. I didn't want to learn about the Prophet ﷺ's life either. They were shocked. They said, why? I said, because they don't know anything about the Prophet ﷺ's life. You sitting down and reading the seerah to them is not going to be effective. You telling them hadith is not going to be effective. You reading Quran to them is not going to be effective. And they get shocked. What are you talking about? Quran is the way of curing people. I understand that. Quran is the way of curing people. Aisha radiallahu anha said the Prophet ﷺ was a walking and talking Quran through his actions. You talk to your children about, loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't, bring them to the masjid, yes. But after that, you know what you do? If you want your children to really fall in love with Islam, Saturday morning, wake up your children. Tell them, listen, Muhammad, you're in charge of getting bread together. Sarah, you're in charge of getting peanut butter. You're in charge of getting this. I'm going to get sandwich bags. We're going to make 20 sandwiches. And we're going to go to the homeless area and distribute the sandwiches today. That's our job today. Today, that's what we're going to do. And everybody has a task. And next week, we're going to go visit the hospital and visit the shelter. And then next week, we're going to go visit the hospital. And then the week after that, we're going to go to the park and we're going to clean up a little bit. This Islam that they're going to see, this is Islam. This is more than telling them. Because, we love to tell our children stuff. But we don't act in front of them. Wallahi, if you do this, spend time with them. You want to tell them something? Take them outside. Take them to the park. Right? Take them to the park and be like, hey, you know what? Let's go to the park and let's just walk and talk. And then tell them some advice that you want to tell them. Hey, you know what? I see how good you're doing in English these days. Like, mashallah, like you're doing pretty well, and I respect that. I like that about you. You know the thing you got to work on a little bit? You got to work on your Quran a little bit. If you spend another 10, 15 minutes a day, I'm telling you, you'll progress just as well as you are in English in your Quran. How many of us actually respect our children and talk to our children like that? Let me ask you this. Why do the children listen to the teacher? When they walk into the classroom, the teacher says, put your cell phones away. Miss Smith says, put your cell phones away. Everybody puts their cell phones away. When it comes to the household, how come when we say turn off the TV, the kids don't listen? How come when it comes to school, they put their shoes on the rack? JK, SK, they go put the shoes on the cubby. Put the jackets on the cubby. How come we can't do that? Because our children don't have respect for us. This is true. If they respect you, they will listen to you. Why? Because we talk to them like they're our slaves. And then we curse them. What's wrong with you? You don't listen. Who's going to marry you? You're so dumb. You're so this. Pagal ho gaye, blah, blah, blah. We curse our children. We expect them. You don't respect me. Well, you don't respect me, Dad. The society over here is based on respect. The teacher will never talk back to the student. We'll give them respect. Go to a classroom one day. Sit. See how the teacher talks to students. Welcome to class, kids. How are you today? What did you do on the weekend? Did everybody get their math homework done? Some kids will say, I didn't get my math homework done. The teacher won't be like, what's wrong with you? Are you stupid? You didn't get... She'll be like, oh, don't worry. You know what? Tomorrow, come back and get your math homework done. Or I'll see you at detention. Spend some time in detention getting your math homework done. The Prophet ﷺ ever disrespect his daughters? Ever talk down to his daughters? Did the Prophet ﷺ ever talk down to the Sahabas that were around him? The younger Sahabas that were around him? Never. You find countless hadith after hadith after hadith of nothing but love the way he talked to his younger Sahabas, like they were his children, with love. So this is a strategy you have to learn. You can't expect your children to respect you if you don't respect them. And unfortunately, these things are very common sense. Very common sense. But we don't practice. We don't put them into play. Another thing that parents ask me is how do, establish rules and regulations in the house? Very simple. When your kids go into a classroom the first day of school, most teachers, they pull out chart paper and they say, okay, you guys get in a group, you guys get in a group, you guys get in a group, you guys get in a group. And I want you to write down rules and regulations of the classroom. And the kids will write down things like, you know, don't use bad language, no bullying, no this, no that. We should sit down with our children and say, children, I know everybody wants to watch TV. I want to watch TV. You want to watch TV. Everyone wants to play. Everyone wants to go out. Nobody wants to read Quran. Nobody wants to study. Let's come up with rules and regulations in the house. At 9 o'clock, we all put our phones in the middle of the dinner table. And nobody picks up their phone, including myself. After 11 o'clock, no Wi-Fi in the house, including myself. No, doesn't matter who's calling from where in the world. Doesn't matter. No one touches it. Mutual building of rules and regulations. Stop this, I'm the man. I make the rules in the house. It doesn't work like that in this country. Remember, you have only till 17, 18 to parent. And if you don't do it right, you're going to lose your kids. Remember this. And parenting doesn't happen from when the child is 1 month old. It happens before that. It happens before that. So, that's how you build the rules and regulations. Sit down with your kids, plan with your kids. And I'll tell you this one thing that's very, very effective. I ask Muslim families this. Do you have a financial plan? They say, yes. We know by this age we want to retire. By this age we want to buy a house. By this age I want to lose this much pounds. For this wedding coming up I want to fit into this dress. I want to do this, I want to do that. And I have it written down. And I ask them this. Do you have a Jannah strategy? Do you have a strategy that you've written down? How am I going to get to Jannah? My Jannah plan. Sit down with your family. Say, guys, let's come up with a Jannah plan. This month, we're going to distribute 20 sandwiches to the homeless. Next month, we're going to send $20 to Pakistan to an orphanage. The next month, we're all going to fast 3 days out of the month. The next month, we're all going to pray Maghrib once a week in the Masjid. That's our Jannah plan. And after we're done, we're going to go for ice cream. That's it. A written Jannah plan, and everybody follows that Jannah plan. And everyone becomes a part of it. And it becomes a culture in the family. That's how we're going to change communities, where we make Islam tangible. We make Islam fun. It is fun. Islam is fun, not make it fun. It is fun because it's a way of life. It's something we should be able to practice. Not unrealistic. Not this extreme, where it's just talk, 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 talk. It's one thing to teach somebody tafsir of the Quran and go through all the tafsir books and memorize them. And it's one thing to act on it. It's one thing to know the sunnah and know how to apply the sunnah. Two different things. So, when Aisha radiallahu anha said the Prophet ﷺ is a walking, talking Quran, if you want your kids to embody the Quran or learn the Quran, first teach them the love. I remember when we started studying, our teacher told us, okay, next week, bring all your books. So we bought all our books. We had all these books on fiqh, aqidah, all these things. We bought them, seerah, blah, blah, blah. We came to our teacher. He said, okay, give me all your books. We said, okay. We said, we had Arabic, learning Arabic, learning Quran, tajweed, this. Teacher, he took all our books. He put it away. He said, for the next 6 months, we're just going to learn about the character of the Prophet ﷺ. And for those 6 months, we learned about simple things. How he walked, how he talked to people, his life story, how the Sahabas were around him, how, when he talked about Jannah, the Sahabas came closer. When he talked about Jahannam, they got afraid. The mistakes the Sahabas made. And we learned the stories, the qasas of the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahabas. And then we started realizing, in the first we started asking, when are we going to learn the juicy stuff? The fiqh, the tafsir, the aqidah, the Arabic language, all the grammar and all those things. She said, you're not ready yet because you haven't fell in love with the Prophet ﷺ's lifestyle. And when you fall in love with him, then you will want to learn those things. And you will be sustainably learning those things. When we have a problem with our children, what do? We take them to Quran class. They don't know the value of the Quran. You're telling them hadith. They don't know the value of the Prophet ﷺ. Why does the hadith matter to them? This is dangerous. You can't expect them to love something they don't know about. But if you ask them about Jake Paul, Logan Paul, and all these YouTubers, they'll tell you everything about their life. But when it comes to Prophet, they don't know anything. Maybe some stories, 1, 2 stories, they know Prophet ﷺ, he had the Quran at this age. and they know some of the Sahabas, but they don't know much. And we don't know much also. So, you want your children to learn, be effective with them, right? Teach them the rules and regulations, build those rules and regulations together. And some parents say, I want my child to become a hafiz. I've heard this many times. I want my child to become a hafiz. I said, did you become a hafiz? No. Why? Say, well, I started and then, I got older, I got busy in work. I said, did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just say, okay, you don't have to become a hafiz now that you're 60 years old? It doesn't matter to you? You just gave up? That's it? It's just for your kid now. I can't do it, There's a brother in Mississauga. He's 63, 64 years old. He became Hafiz Quran. And he has memory loss problems. So don't just expect your children to become Hafiz Quran when you yourself don't want to do it or don't do it. You have to be the example in everything. When you tell them to sit down and do homework, bring your paperwork and sit down with them. Don't just be watching TV while they're doing homework. Because this is, unfortunately, how the society is. Now, this Jannah action plan is very important because you make it fun. You make it tangible. I always tell people, Islam is like a diet. Islam is like a diet. If you go really strong in the diet, no sugars, no carbs, that's it. I'm only going to eat fruits and vegetables and just chicken breast and nothing. You're going to do it for 3, 4 days, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days. At the 10th day, you're going to go and have a big bowl of biryani. Islam, if it's not something you do with balance, you will not do it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't want you to pray qiyam all night and then never pray again. So I tell people, if you're not praying right now, try to pray once a day. If you're not wearing hijab right now, it's okay, wear loose clothes. If your beard is not there right now, you haven't grown it the way you think you should, grow it slowly. But don't do all these physical changes and you neglect the most important change, the heart. Because these physical changes, yes, they're important. I'm not saying they're not important, but they don't reflect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to look at you and say, MashaAllah, you have a beard, you wear hijab, but you didn't practice Islam. So come, welcome to Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to ask you based on your a'mal, your actions. That's what defines a Muslim. Those things are a part of your faith. You have to do those things, but your actions are what define you. Husband and wife, how we are in front of our children. Right? When we argue in front of our children, we teach our daughters and our sons that disrespecting each other is normal. That disrespecting each other is normal. Now, every husband and wife relationship, there must be discussions, there must be arguments. The way you do it is you go separate away from your children, sit in the car and discuss the issues you have to discuss. Do not fight in front of your children. This is a mistake that we all make. A lot of us make. We fight, we argue in front of our children. You're teaching your children that disrespecting each other is okay. Now, just a couple of more things. When it comes to finances, teaching your children how to be financially smart. I have parents tell me, my kids, they want everything. They want these shoes, they want this iPad. My son, he's 17 now, he says, Dad, buy me a car. Financial responsibility starts when they're 3 years old. 3, 4 years old. I'll tell you the trick. When your kids are 3 years old, you give them $2, $3 a week. $2, $3 a week. Every week. And you tell them, at the end of the month, when you have $8 to $10, you have to give a percentage of this in zakat. And you have to give a percentage of this towards the groceries at home, and the rest of the money you can keep. They start thinking, okay, I have to give zakat. And they start learning the value of money. What we think is as our kids just have to study, they don't have to work. Every Muslim boy and girl should start working when they reach 16, 17 years old. If not working, you don't want them to work, okay, make them volunteer at the local hospital. So they can learn responsibilities, communication skills, what it's like to be in the real world and be Muslim. Most of our boys, they're like babies. And when they get married, they don't know. They've never washed clothes before. They've never washed. If you're 17, 18 years old, you have a son who's 17, 18, 24, 25, I see in some Muslim households. He doesn't wash his own clothes. He doesn't clean his own room. He doesn't wash his dishes. You're raising a baby. Your house is an amazing hotel. I would love to come and live there. You walk in, you get food, you don't have to wash your clothes, nothing. You sleep, you get up in the morning. All you have to do is pray, make the parents happy. And you can do whatever you want. You don't have to pay bills. Your parents pay for your cell phone. Your parents pay for your car. You don't know anything about financial responsibility. And when you get married, your parents pay for your wedding and you get married, and then you're expected to learn everything. We're raising babies. In Islam, we don't have this concept of you're just a teenager. Once you reach the state of puberty, baligh, you're a man. You're responsible for your prayer. You're responsible for your actions. It's not like, okay, don't worry about it. You can start praying when you're 18. Or you could start smoking when you're 19. You could start drinking when you're 21. This age thing, this is all created by Western societies. Islam doesn't have this because nobody could smoke. Nobody could drink. Nobody can have premarital relationships. Islam is an application for every age group. So we have to create men. We have to create women, not girls. We have to teach our women how to respect our husbands and our husbands how to respect our wives. And general respect at school between the opposite gender. So these are some things that we need to do. And don't just have rules and regulations for your daughters. Same rules and regulations apply for your sons. If you tell your daughter, no, you can't go out after 6 o'clock, your son cannot go out after 6 o'clock. Don't pick and choose, because there's equality in the society. And that is an Islamic thing also. Equality should be on both. The same rules and regulations. If I go to the shisha bars in the community and see what's there, it's filled with Muslim kids, boys and girls. But you see, at Maghrib time, at Isha time, the girls will start leaving. Oh, we have to go home, we can't be out. The boys are okay, 2, 3 o'clock they're there, chilling. Why? Why this double standard? Is Islam not applicable to boys? To men? Teach your kids financial responsibility from that age. Teach them Islamic responsibility. Teach them to respect women and men. Teach them the rules and regulations. Clean up after yourself. Don't put them down. Respect them. Talk to them with mutual respect. Don't lie in front of your children. If somebody calls, don't say, oh, tell them I'm in the washroom, and then you go stand in the washroom. Don't do these things because you're teaching them to lie. You're teaching them disloyalty. You're teaching them dishonesty. And they see that. Remember, you're their Islam. People say, how can we change the media? The media distorts Islam. No, you are the media. And you are the da'wah in your own house. And the Prophet ﷺ said, you are responsible as a father, as a mother, to guide your flock to Jannah. And remember, the most important thing, if there's anything you take from this workshop, is that your children are your amana. And you will be answerable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on which way you took them to. Did you take them to Jannah? Did you take them to Jahannam? How did you treat your wife? How did you treat your husband? And in the end, there's only two sides. The side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the side of shaitan. And every single morning, when you wake up in the morning, you make a decision. Every single morning. Are you going to be stagnant the way you were the day before? Or are you going to improve yourself in every area of your life? Financially, spiritually, physically, emotionally. Are you going to contribute to the greater good of humanity and Islam? Or are you not? So remember, every day defines, every opportunity is a chance to choose and be a better Muslim, be a better person, and inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will make it easy for you. And remember, in the end, you have to take some time for yourself also. You have to respect your body, your mind. Take some time, go for a drive once in a while, have a coffee. I'm not saying go away 2 weeks to Bahamas. I'm saying take some time to reflect on yourself and your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you know, these things, they all sound very nice and fancy. And anybody could stand in front of you and talk and give you a nice talk, and there's nothing special about that. What's important is what you do now with what little you may have learned. Even if you learned one thing, do you apply it to change your life to actually be reflective of these things? And I ask you, if you do, inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put barakah in your life, make the difficulties easy, and not so Islam, people say, oh, when you accept Islam, you start practicing, everything will become easy. This is not true. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will test you to see what you're going to do. But you have to embrace and accept the test, and your children are a part of this test. And you being a Muslim is a part of the test. And your wife is a part of the test. And your husband is a part of the test. So remember, your actions are reflective of where you'll end up, inshallah. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in knowledge. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to increase us in being better humans, in being better Muslims, as being better slaves, as being better husbands, wives, and children. If there's anything I said that offended you today, please forgive me. It's out of the benefit of what little I've learned and my little bit of experience. I'm sure, alhamdulillah, in front of me I have much senior people that know a lot more than me, and I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive me for that. But please, if you could take this back and share with your family and friends, inshallah, it will be beneficial to the community. Tomorrow, I'm teaching a workshop for teenagers, 10 to 20 years old, and we talk about making the lives of the Sahabas tangible. So how do you apply what you learn in the lives of the Sahabas, their stories, how they came to Islam, their hobbies, the struggles that they went through. And it's a very fun workshop, takes place over 2 days, and I teach it across Canada, alhamdulillah. So I'm teaching that this weekend, inshallah, Saturday and Sunday. So please register your children, inshallah, at ymcanada.ca. I think there might be some flyers in the back, or you can come and see me after. If you have any questions, I open the floor to questions. If not, you want to talk to me personally, feel free to come and speak to me personally, inshallah. Are there any questions? No? Okay, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.